Just saying, Habs fans, you might want to cover your ears for this one. So, today we're talking about newly signed LA Kings center Phillip Danault and an interview that he did with a podcast based in the LA area. Take a look at this. This is the All the Kings Men podcast. I will leave a link in the description to the episode if you want to go ahead and listen to this yourself. Now, I'm going to be referring and screenshotting this article from TVA Sports that goes over the quotes because, as I always say, it's easier to screenshot, put the quotes on the screen so you can follow along in the video narrative, but today we're talking about Phillip Danault and what he said on the podcast appearance for All the Kings Men. Now, a quick aside before we actually get into how Phillip Danault is describing his process of heading over to LA and whatnot. It's actually kind of interesting because I noticed this about Alex Edler too, but LA people, when they get new guys heading into town, sometimes, more often than not, they actually get a podcast episode. So it's kind of cool to see the interviews come out here from your hockey players, and I do think that kind of content being made available in the media sphere in that environment is a good thing. So what we're going to be doing is going over the quotes that Phillip Danault had on the podcast episode. Here's what the TVA Sports article goes on about. By the way, this is translated from French into English, so if these quotes are not verbatim in English, because I do assume that the LA podcast done by LA Kings fans with Phillip Danault, who plays for the LA Kings, was done in English, then my apologies. But either way, this is what Phillip Danault says. He says, "My wife and I arrived last week in LA. We immediately liked the atmosphere. It feels great on vacation. It's like arriving in Hawaii. It's incredible. It is totally different from Montreal for sure. And I think it'll be great." Yeah, I haven't been to Montreal, I've been to LA, so I kind of know that there is a very distinct vibe in the city of LA. It's why they call it the City of Angels after all. And then you go over onto the next quote over here. "And all the other teams are there too, like the LA Dodgers and the Lakers. That's why I'm not as famous as in Montreal. It's like a little paradise." And you know what? That little piece right there is something that I think gets overlooked a lot when you're talking about NHL athletes in particular. Specifically, I remember it was Ilya Kovalchuk who made this distinction, and I think Tyler Toffoli had a similar sentiment as well when discussing the differences between LA and Vancouver, I think. That in Los Angeles, you are just a guy. You know, you can walk down the street, nobody bothers you, you're okay, you're just going about your business, nobody cares. Because in LA, look, if you're a star of the LA Kings, cool, you're making millions of dollars, but come on, people don't care about the stars of the LA Kings when they're walking down the street. They care about LeBron James. They care about the stars of the movies they watch. They care about the actors, and they care about all the big, high-profile name people in the environment. So for guys like Kovalchuk and Toffoli who have experienced the differences in being in Montreal and LA and Vancouver, in Toffoli's case in the past, they acknowledge the difference that, yeah, when you're in Montreal, when you're in Vancouver, when you're in these big market Canadian hockey cities, when you walk down the street and you're like Tyler Mott or whatever, you're Paul Byron, people recognize you and people go up to you and they say hi, they want to get your picture or whatever because, hey, you're a guy who plays on the Habs, you play for the Canucks, you are a part of a very integral vibe to this city. But in LA, it's not like that. You know, the Kings are one of many sports teams that exist in Los Angeles, and they are definitely not the biggest in terms of fan base and overall impact in the community. So the area is a lot more diverse when it comes to being a star for this one hockey team, which is why a guy like Phillip Danault is saying, yeah, there's a lot of sports teams here. That's why I'm not as famous here than I was in Montreal. It's like a little paradise. He then says this, "The fans are indeed passionate in LA, but when things don't go as planned, they're not too disappointed because they have other teams to watch. It's not the only thing to watch on TV. In Montreal, the Habs, yeah, they're the only thing to watch on TV. And so if you score the winning goal, you're the hero, but if you concede the goals, the ups and downs follow you quickly." And, you know, this is another one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's the pressure of playing in a Canadian market, baby. If you play in the Montreal Canadiens, people are going out there and people are going to be critiquing you left and right, even if you're not even doing anything. Like, that's just kind of how it is playing in Montreal, where the spotlight is always on their players. And I don't think any Canadiens fans are going to go out there and disagree with me that that is the case, which, I mean, look, just because you're acknowledging that it is like that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't want to say that Phillip Danault in particular is all too incorrect there. I mean, yeah, LA Kings fans, is that true? Do you guys just default to other teams in your city when the Kings aren't doing all too well? Personally, I don't know if I can do that. Like, if I am on board with a team, I'll be there with the ups and downs, you know? It's tough for me to boycott a team just because they're not doing all too well. I mean, sure, maybe it wanes the disappointment a little bit when you say, alright, the Lakers lost in overtime to the Sharks tonight. Alright, well, just time to watch the Lakers game now. Maybe that's a little bit of a different vibe that I can't really experience here because I'm not a fan of the BC Lions, nor am I a fan of the Vancouver Whitecaps. But, regardless, Phillip Danault does indeed bring that point up. 1 year in Montreal, we didn't win a lot of home games, and you can feel the change in the mood and the pressure. It wasn't fun. But if you win, on the other hand, yeah, the entire vibe changes. This TVA Sports article actually says a sentence that I don't know if I really agree with either way after that quote, because the article says, because of this, the defensive center was determined to move on in order to live new experiences, and he believes that the Canadiens and his supporters have provided him with the tools to face many obstacles. I was really ready to move on from the Habs, Danault said. To go with a new team for the second part of my career, maybe find out new things about myself. Sometimes a change doesn't hurt. It was a very good mental test for me to play in Montreal. Now, obviously, there are a lot more quotes over here. This is a very long podcast episode, and this article here on TVA Sports, you can scroll once, and you're all the way at the bottom. So it's not really encapsulating everything from the Danault interview, but I think the way this article is being framed is done in a very particular way, where they want to make it seem like Phillip Danault from the beginning was going out there and thinking in his head, you know, I don't want to play in Montreal anymore. I'm done with Montreal. I'm good with being here and cementing my legacy as the guy who scored that one goal in the finals, and that's about it. I'm ready to move on, and I'm ready for new experiences where I'm playing for teams that don't really get too hard on their hockey players. I think that's kind of the vibe the TVA Sports article is going for here, and of course, if you disagree, you can comment in the comment section below what you're thinking about this as well and the way the article is framed, because I just read you all the quotes that are included in this piece right here. But either way, you know, Phillip Danault, at the end of the day, he's his own guy. I know a lot of Canadiens fans might not be big fans of what he said at the end here, where he's like, yeah, I was ready to move on, to go with a new team for the second part of my career, and find out new things about myself. It was a very good mental test for me to play in Montreal. I would not be surprised if Canadiens fans are like, wow, look at Phillip Danault, man. He was already thinking, before the contract signing period even started, that he's gonna leave Montreal. He was saying this entire time to the media, yeah, you know, we'll work something out, whatever, it's not a big deal right now, all that cliche stuff that everybody ends up saying. He was saying all that stuff, but in the back of his mind, he was thinking the entire time, oh, we're gonna leave, we're gonna go to a new place, I want to find a new team. Wow, like, I know some Canadiens fans might get pissed off about that, but come on. Like, this is kind of how it always goes, isn't it? NHL teams lose free agents all the time in circumstances like these, so for Phillip Danault, he is just another one who ends up doing the same thing. It is kind of interesting, though, how the entire thing is labeled out here as just a mental test. You know, like the Canadiens and the way that he played and his entire tenure here, it was just a mental test for the guy. That's a really interesting way to put it, you know? Either way, though, again, a link is in the description not only to this article on TVA Sports where I screenshotted the quotes, but also to the All the Kings Men podcast episode with Phillip Danault as the interviewee. This stuff is always a lot longer than the articles published about it are, so go ahead and listen to it. Get yourself some insight as to what Phillip Danault is thinking about his new home in the LA system. Habs fans, talk to me in the comments. What do you think about Danault's comments? Do you think these are kind of off-putting in a way? Do you appreciate these comments? Do you appreciate that he's going out there and being honest about his entire perception of being a free agent and going to a different team? Does it kind of bother you the way that he phrased these? Or does it bother you the way that the article on TVA Sports puts these quotes together to assemble a specific narrative? LA Kings fans, let me know in the comments what you think about the entire environment in LA and how different it is from what the Toffoli's and the Kovalchuks and now the Danaults are describing when it comes to big-time Canadian markets. And please, let me know in the comments if you in particular fall under the same kind of philosophy that Phillip Danault is talking about, where if the Kings tick you off, you can just go ahead and yeet off to another team and be okay. Is that accurate? I don't know if it would be, because I'm coming from the perspective of a guy who only really watches one local sports team in my area. Either way, though, talk to me in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.